An open border is a border that enables free movement of people between different jurisdictions, with limited or no restrictions on movement. That is to say, lacking substantive border control. A border may be an open border due to a lack of legal controls or intentional legislation allowing free movement of people across the border, de jure. Or a border may be an open border due to lack of adequate enforcement or adequate supervision of the border, de facto. An example of the former is the Schengen Agreement between most members of the European Economic Area, EFTA, and the EU. An example of the latter has been the border between Bangladesh and India, which is becoming controlled. The term open borders applies only to the flow of people, not the flow of goods and services. Open borders are the norm for borders between subdivisions within the boundaries of sovereign states, though some countries do have controlled borders within the boundaries of the state. For example, in the People's Republic of China between the mainland and the administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. Open borders are also usual between member states of federations, such as the United States of America, and confederations such as Switzerland, though again in some instances movement between member states may be controlled via an internal passport system. Federations and confederations typically maintain external border controls through a collective border control system, though they sometimes have open borders with other non-member states through special international agreements. Pervasive international border control is a relatively recent phenomenon in world history. In the past, many states had open international borders either in effect or due to a lack of any legal restriction. Many authors, such as John Maynard Keynes, have identified the early 20th century and particularly World War I as the point when such controls became common. Different types of borders. To understand the arguments for and against open borders, it is necessary to have a basic understanding of the other types of borders available. These are: a conditionally open border is a border that allows movement of people across the border that meet a special set of conditions. This special set of conditions which limits the application of border controls that would normally otherwise apply could be defined by an international agreement or international law, or the special conditions could be defined by a regulation or law of the jurisdiction that the people are claiming the right to enter. Conditionally open borders generally requires a claim to be submitted from the people who are proposing to enter the new jurisdiction, stating why they meet the special conditions which allow entry into the new jurisdiction. The new jurisdiction may detain the people until their claim is approved for entry into the new jurisdiction, or they may release them into the new jurisdiction while their claim is being processed. Whenever a conditionally open border is allowed, a considerable effort is often required to ensure that border controls do not break down to such an extent that it becomes an open border situation. An example of a conditionally open border is a border of any country which allows movement of asylum seekers due to application of either the 1951 Refugee Convention or international law which allows people to cross a border to escape a situation where their lives are directly threatened or in significant danger. Another example is the border between Ireland and the United Kingdom. The two countries allow unrestricted movement of their own citizens, but in order to enjoy such movement through airports in Ireland, those same citizens are required to provide evidence that they are UK or Irish nationals. A controlled border is a border that allows movement of people between different jurisdictions but places restrictions and sometimes significant restrictions on this movement. This type of border may require a person crossing this border to obtain a visa or in some cases, may allow a short period of visa-free travel in the new jurisdiction. A controlled border always has some method of documenting and recording people movements across the border for later tracking and checking compliance with any conditions associated with the visa, or any other border crossing conditions. A controlled border places limitations on what a person crossing the border can do in the new jurisdiction. This is usually manifested in limitations on employment, and also it limits the length of time the person can legally remain in the new jurisdiction. A controlled border often requires some type of barrier, such as a river, ocean, or fence, to ensure that the border controls are not bypassed, so that any people wishing to cross the border are directed to authorized border crossing points where any border crossing conditions can be properly monitored. Given the large-scale movement of people today for work, holidays, study and other reasons, a controlled border also requires internal checks and internal enforcement within the jurisdiction to ensure that any people who have entered the jurisdiction are in fact complying with any border crossing conditions, and that they are not overstaying to reside illegally or as an undocumented resident. Most international borders are by legislative intent of the controlled border type. However, where there is a lack of adequate internal enforcement, or where the borders are land borders, the border is often controlled only on part of the border, while other parts of the border may remain open to such an extent that it may be considered an open border due to lack of supervision and enforcement. A closed border is a border that prevents movement of people between different jurisdictions, with limited or no exceptions associated with this movement. These borders normally have fences or walls in which any gates or border crossings are closed, and if these border gates are open, they generally only allow movement of people in exceptional circumstances. Perhaps the most famous example of an extant closed border is the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea. The Berlin Wall could also have been called a closed border. Arguments for open borders. Open borders advocates argue that free migration is the most effective way to reduce world poverty. Migrants from developing countries can earn higher wages after moving to a more developed country, usually lifting them from developing world poverty to developed world poverty. They also send remittances to relatives in their home country, the flow of remittances being estimated to be around 3 times the global foreign aid spending, reported by the OECD. A literature summary by economist Michael Clemens leads to an estimate that open borders would result in an increase of 67 to 147% in GWP, gross world product, with a median estimate of a doubling of world GDP. From a human rights perspective, free migration may be seen to complement Article 13 of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. 1. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. 2. Everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. American bioethicist Jacob M. Apple has argued that treating human beings differently, simply because they were born on the opposite side of a national boundary, is inherently unethical. According to Apple, such birthrights are only defensible if they serve useful and meaningful social purposes, such as inheritance rights, which encourage mothers and fathers to work and save for their children. But the birthright of nationality does not do so. Economist and writer Philippe Legrain argues that the countries of the world need migration to help global trade and reduce the occurrence of regional wars. Open borders cannot be dismissed as a utopian idea, argues Harold Border, because they do not propose an alternative way to organize human society, but rather are a critique of closed or controlled borders. This critique, however, invites the search for practical as well as radical solutions to the problematic consequences of contemporary migration practices, including the deaths of migrants in the Mediterranean Sea, the US-Mexico border, and elsewhere. It has been proposed that borders between the North American Free Trade Agreement (NAFTA) countries be opened. If goods and services and corporations can cross international boundaries without restraint, it is argued, then it does not make sense to restrain on the flow of people who work to make those goods and services. An extensive reading list of pro-open borders arguments is available on the website Open Borders. The Case, a website advocating and discussing open borders. The authors referenced include Brian Kaplan, Alex Tabarrok, Michael Clemens, Lant Pritchett, Joseph Cairns, and many others. Arguments against open borders. Controlled borders restrict migration by non-citizens. Several arguments for controlled borders and against open borders are as follows. That controlled borders encourage responsible policies in relation to population and birth rates for countries by preventing high population and high birth rate countries from disgorging their people onto other low population and low birth rate countries. That open borders can be a threat to security and public safety. The threats to security and public safety can sometimes manifest themselves many decades after the initial immigration. That large-scale migration across open borders can result in demographic changes that can result in demographic shifts that change a country's political power structures in favor of the new demographic and against the existing people of a region or country. That open borders can lead to infrastructure deficit in a country. This occurs when large-scale migration occurs but the infrastructure to support that migration does not get built. Examples of open borders. Nordic Passport Union. One of the earliest open border agreements was the Nordic Passport Union of 1952. The entire Nordic region, apart from Svalbard, see below, have subsequently become part of the Schengen area. Svalbard. Uniquely, the Norwegian special territory of Svalbard is an entirely visa-free zone. No person is required visa or residence permit, and anyone may live and work in Svalbard indefinitely, regardless of citizenship. Svalbard Treaty grants treaty nationals equal right of abode as Norwegian nationals. So far, non-treaty nationals were admitted visa-free as well. Regulations concerning rejection and expulsion from Svalbard in force. List of groups of states with common open borders. Examples of controlled borders. The border between the United States and Mexico is controlled. This border is the most frequently cross-controlled international boundary in the world, with approximately 350 million legal crossings being made annually. India and Bangladesh share a border, which India is in the process of turning into a controlled border via the completion of a full border fence between the two countries to control the flow of people between the two countries and prevent illegal migration. Large-scale illegal Bangladeshi immigration in the past across the open border has entered India, creating Bangladeshi slums on the outskirts of many India cities. The Bangladeshi people are expected to soon form the majority of people in India in areas close to the India-Bangladeshi border, largely as a result of the past and continuing illegal immigration. Entry into any of the U.S. minor outlying islands requires permission from the U.S. military, and entry to the territory of American Samoa for U.S. citizens requires a return ticket. Examples of closed borders. North Korea and South Korea share a militarized border, known as the Korean Demilitarized Zone, which has been in operation since the suspension of the Korean War in July 1953, when the Korean Armistice Agreement established the DMZ near 38 degrees north. The strip of land along the border has many landmines and movement detection equipment. There is around 2 border crossings between North and South Korea but are mostly closed and are opened from time to time with strict restrictions. The Azerbaijani-Armenian border is completely closed. Due to the state of war between the two countries over the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, Turkey closed its border with Armenia in April 1993, out of solidarity for Azerbaijan in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, and is still in effect to this day. Turkey has very close relations with Azerbaijan and no formal relations with Armenia. India and Pakistan share a border that is almost closed due to the hostilities between these two countries. The only controlled border crossing is at Wagga. The border between Ukraine and Moldova at Transnistria is closed to male Russian passport holders. The border between Algeria and Morocco has been completely closed since 1994. The Central African Republic's state of civil war has caused Chad to close all land borders between the two countries. The Eritrean-Ethiopian War has left long-standing hostilities between the two countries and thus all border crossings between them, whether land or air, are closed. The border between Venezuela and Colombia is partially closed by the government of Venezuela. The border between Lebanon and Israel and between Syria and Israel is closed. See also free migration. Notes. Austria, Denmark, France, Germany, Norway, and Sweden have temporarily imposed controls on some or all of their borders due to the ongoing European migrant crisis. Further reading. Acme, 2003. Volume 2.2. Themed issue. Engagements. Borders and Immigration. Abizadeh, Arash. 2008. Democratic Theory and Border Coercion. No right to unilaterally control your own borders. Political Theory. 35. 1. 37-65. Bada, Vi. 2005. The Ethics of Immigration. Constellations. 12. 3. 331-61. DOI. 10.1111, J. 1351-2048.2005.00420. X. Barry, Brian, and Robert E. Gooden, eds. 1992. Free Movement. Ethical Issues in the Transnational Migration of People and of Money. University Park, PA. Pennsylvania State University Press. Border, Harold. 2003. Equality, Justice, and the Problem of International Borders. Acme. 2. 165-182. Border, Harold. 2017. Migration, Borders, Freedom. London. Routledge. Blake, Michael. 2003. Immigration. In a Companion to Applied Ethics. Ed. R. G. Frey and C. H. Wellman. Oxford. Blackwell. Bosniak, Linda. 2006. The Citizen and the Alien. Dilemmas of Contemporary Membership. Princeton. Princeton University Press. Brubaker, W. R. ed. 1989. Immigration and the Politics of Citizenship in Europe and North America. Lanham, M.D. University Press of America. Cairns, Joseph H. 1987. Aliens and Citizens. The Case for Open Borders. The Review of Politics. 49. 2. 251-73. DOI. 10.1017 per seconds 00346705000333817. Chang, Howard F. 1997. Liberalized Immigration as Free Trade. Economic Welfare and the Optimal Immigration Policy. University of Pennsylvania Law Review. 145. 5. 1147-244. DOI. 10.2307 3,312,665. Cole, Philip. 2000. Philosophies of Exclusion. Liberal Political Theory and Immigration. Edinburgh. Edinburgh University Press. Doven, Catherine. 2008. making people illegal. What globalization means for migration and law. Cambridge. Cambridge University Press. Dummett, Michael. 2001. On Immigration and Refugees. London. Routledge. Ethics and Economics. 2006. Volume 4.1. Special issue on immigration. Gibney, Mark. ed. 1988. Open Borders. Closed Societies. The Ethical and Political Issues. New York. Greenwood Press. Heath, Joseph. 1997. Immigration, Multiculturalism, and the Social Contract. PDF. Canadian Journal of Law and Jurisprudence. 10. 2. 343-61. DOI. 10.1017 per seconds 0841820900001569. Humer, Michael. 2010. Is there a right to immigrate? Quote. Social Theory and Practice. 36. 3. 429-61. DOI. 10.5840. Sokshahiorprak 201,036,323. Miller, David, and Suhail Hashmi, eds. 2001. Boundaries and Justice. Diverse Ethical Perspectives. Princeton, N.J. Princeton University Press. Miller, David. 2005. Immigration. The Case for Limits. In Contemporary Debates in Applied Ethics. Ed. A. I. Cohen and C. H. Wellman. Oxford. Blackwell. Riley. Jason L. 2008. Let Them In. The Case for Open Border. Gotham. ISBN 1-59240-349-2. Schwartz. Warren F. ed. 1995. Justice in Immigration. Cambridge. Cambridge University Press. Swain, Carol M. ed. 2007. Debating Immigration. New York. Cambridge University Press. Torpey, John. 2000. The Invention of the Passport. Surveillance, Citizenship, and the State. Cambridge. Cambridge University Press. Walzer, Michael. 1983. Spheres of Justice. A Defense of Pluralism and Equality. Oxford. Blackwell. Wellman. Christopher Heath. 2008. Immigration and Freedom of Association. Ethics. 119. 109-141. DOI. 10.1086 592,311.